Welcome to Afros in the Diaspora. My name is Sarah. I am your host, and together we will vent, rant, laugh, and cry as we discuss the highs and lows of being an immigrant. Stay tuned for stories that will inspire, inform, entertain, and give hope. This is Afros in the Diaspora. Welcome to Obaro OBJ, aka aka OBJ.
Hello.
How are you?
I am good. How about yourself?
I am well. Thank you for being a part of today's podcast. I hope you're excited for our conversation today.
Of course, and thank you for having me. I really do appreciate it. I'm looking forward to our conversation today.
Me too. I'm very excited. So let's get into our icebreakers for today. I'm going to quiz you. You remember current affairs in your secondary school? In Nigeria?
No. In Nigeria. It's okay. I wish myself the best of luck.
I wish you the best of luck too. This should be easy. You know, it was one of those things they had us do in school that most people
But
still know it today.
I only did primary school in Nigeria. So
you learned it in primary school. It's not hard, I promise.
Okay, you forget I only did what's below primary school? Elementary school in Nigeria.
Elementary school and primary school are the same thing. See your head.
Okay, I can't escape now.
You can't escape it.
I'm about to be exposed.
You see, you got this. You're an engineer. You got this.
Okay, now let's go.
I want you to tell us state and capital of the states in Nigeria. Do states and capital. Yes.
Okay, let's go.
Do you remember? States and capital, go.
Of Nigeria, right?
Of Ethiopia. You're not serious. Of Nigeria.
Abuja is the capital, and it's in the. Wow, you're making me nervous all of a sudden. So Abuja.
Abia, Umaya, Adamawa, Yola. That's what I should be hearing right now.
I don't know that one anymore. I know what you're talking about. I know that one you're talking about, but ask me only about Lagos, Delta State, and that's it. I give up. No, I'm already sweating. It's hot. Damn, all my credentials right now, you just exposed me. Finish. Do you know? Last time I heard that song has to be like 20-something years ago.
That's okay.
It's okay. I'll take this L.
You know what? It's all right. It's a lesson. That's all.
Let me redeem myself. What's the next one? I'm ready. Remember though, I have been out of Nigeria for 24 years.
That's a long time.
That's a long time.
Okay,
Yeah.
let me have mercy for you. How many countries are in Africa? And name 10.
54. Okay, so we got Nigeria, we got Ghana, we got Egypt, we got Libya, we got Burundi, you got Uganda, you got Cameroon, you got Mozambique, you got Eritrea, you got Ethiopia, you got Sudan, you got Cote d'Ivoire.
It's okay. Ask you to list your state.
No, if it's geography, of countries, I can do that in my sleep.
Okay, now let's have you do the one for Canada. All the provinces in Canada and their capital cities.
Let me start with the obscure one. So there's PEI. There's so that's pretty. Then there is Newfoundland. So that's the obscure one.
And the capital cities.
Oh, and the capital cities.
Yes.
Oh, PEI, Newfoundland. No, I don't know. But let's go easy. Ottawa and Ontario, Edmonton and Alberta, Vancouver and BC, Regina and Saskatchewan, Winnipeg and Manitoba, yeah. And I know I'm missing another one. So there is BC. Oh,
by the way, capital city of BC is actually Victoria.
That's what I said. I said Victoria.
You said Vancouver.
No, I said Victoria. I think your ears are not working. I said Victoria. I think Yukon territory is Nunavut.
It's okay. It's okay. Let me know. All these quizzes I'm doing are, putting you on the hot seat.
Whitehorse, that's the capital.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have Yellowknife for something else.
Are you literally looking at Google right now?
No, of course not.
So what are you looking at?
My globe.
Oh.
And then Quebec.
Montreal.
Quebec it's not Quebec City.
You know what? It's Quebec City. It's actually Quebec City. You're right. You're right.
I know I passed that citizenship test.
All right. Thank you for engaging with me in answering those questions and
That first one, I would say I was hacked on. You
You
don't
were
understand. I
hacked.
was hacked.
Was it AI?
It was AI. You know AI these days, man. You can't. Matter of fact, this entire thing, you're talking to an AI right now. You
You're
don't know
not well.
that.
Oh my goodness. Thank you. Thank you for engaging with me in that. Appreciate it.
Anytime.
As we get into this topic, I want you to kind of give us a background about your story as an immigrant. I know you have traveled worldwide. You know what I mean? You've lived in
Mm.
different continents and you have different experiences. So I just want you to give us a quick, background so we have an idea of who you are.
For sure, for sure. So as I mentioned initially, I left Nigeria 24 years ago, and I actually left Nigeria when I was 11. So who wants to do the math can do the math there. So I left Nigeria when I was 11, and my dad, he got a job posting in Venezuela in South America. So we moved there. We lived there for 4.5 years, and then from Venezuela we moved to the States, where I was there for about 4 years or so. Yeah, I did junior year and senior year of high school in Houston, and then I did my first 2 years of university in San Antonio before eventually moving to Calgary in 2009, where I continued my studies, and I'm here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So yes, yeah, just kind of got the chance to explore just a few facets of what's of I guess, yeah, different countries really
Yeah.
for solid years before settling down here.
And here being Canada.
Yes, yeah, yeah, in Calgary, Canada.
Calgary, Canada. Wow. Okay. Now,
Fun fact,
oh,
fun fact, Calgary is now the place or the city I've lived the longest amount of years in.
so
Yeah,
you've been in
so
Canada longer than you've been anywhere else?
yes, yeah,
Oh, wow.
yeah.
So
It's quite crazy.
this is home, home.
Eventually, it became home, home. Yeah, took a minute, but yeah, it became home, home.
Yeah, I think it usually takes a moment, especially like you move. It sounds like you moved from Nigeria to Venezuela to the U.S. and then here. Like it's
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Like I did not see, even when I hit that 11, 12 year mark, I still didn't see Calgary as like a permanent thing. It just felt like oh, I'm here for the moment.
Hmm.
But after 12, 13 years, 14 years, you're like, oh, maybe not.
How has settling in all these different places kind of affected your own self identity and your own perception of your blackness or yourself as an immigrant in spaces?
Yeah, that's a question I'm still able to answer today, but I'm much more settled today. But for the longest time in different spaces, I just wasn't sure of what I would even identify as. I remember when I'm gonna work backwards. When I first moved here and I was interacting more with Nigerians, because when I was in the States, I was interacting more with African Americans. I felt out of place. I felt like I was more African American than Nigerian or African because, even before Afrobeats became hip, like I didn't know any Nigerian songs or Nigerian artists, so I would know like just maybe one or two, but I couldn't tell you what songs they sang or whatever the case may be. So I felt out of place in that moment. But it's funny because when I was in the States, I definitely felt like a Nigerian among African Americans because again, different backgrounds, different experiences, and so on and so forth. And as far as like shaping my worldview, like it's allowed me to be able to kind of understand different perspectives in a lot of ways. For example, I've came across friends who could not really fathom the African American experience, and then I would just kind of have to explain that it's not just a case of like there is a lot more of that, if you want to say systematic beatdown, if you will,
Hmm.
and you can only understand if you actually live there, you know, because I remember I was talking to a friend one time. He's like, "Oh, you just can't understand why, some African Americans can't like get their stuff together." I'm just like, that's not really how it works, Like it's again, I was only able to explain or talk more about that because I have lived the experience myself. So for me, like as far as like shaping my worldview, like it's allowed me to form a whole new identity for myself. If you ask me today what am I, would say like I'm proudly Nigerian Canadian. But my experiences over the last 24 years have allowed me to be able to live different experiences to further solidify that. Like, my Nigerian Canadian identity doesn't have to be the same as yours. It's different and it's unique in its own way, just like yours is unique in your own way. And that's what makes the beauty of the entire experience. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, yeah, and that's really interesting because it's such a weird sentiment I find for
Hmm.
people to have because I've not been in Canada for as long as you have, but I certainly feel like there are systematic like limitations to people of color and
Yep.
especially black people, and then if you're an immigrant then there's layers and intersectionalities to it.
The crazy thing is that one thing that was unique, that is unique in my experience, is just that like you're noticeably black. Being outside of Nigeria and being in Venezuela was the first time that the concept of being black even became a thing.
Hmm.
So I had to like face that challenge of of racism or people just being not nice, so to speak. And then going to the States, once again, it's like, okay, so not only am I black, I'm also African or Nigerian. And then you have African Americans asking me like, oh, do they do this in Africa? Do they do this in Nigeria? And then you have, you know, the I would say Caucasians, being their usual selves. Not all of them, obviously, but like that experience is still you're still experiencing what it is to be a Black American and also be like an other within that space too as well.
Yeah.
And then coming to Canada to here too as well, you find that I don't know, it's very odd like the Black experience because it's always no matter where you are, it seems there's an experience unique to the pigmentation of your skin.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, which
Yeah.
which like I was like no matter where I was outside of being in a black dominated country, there is a unique experience that is directly tied to the color of my skin. So
That is so interesting because um yes, yes, and there's an experience unique to the color of your skin. But by the time you open your mouth and you have an accent, that further impacts how people see you, even within that same
hmm.
color of skin.
Yeah,
You know
exactly.
what I
Yeah.
mean? And I guess that inspires a question from me because I'm really curious about your experience in Venezuela. And I know you're a kid, right? So you didn't have a lot of like adult agency that you have now. But I'm really curious about what that was like because Venezuelans are not white people, they are also people of color. But then experiencing racism from other people of color. Talk about that.
Yeah, like I said, like I touched on, like it's just such a unique experience that has to do with this color of your skin. And I remember when, first of all, Venezuela was a culture shock. I had never seen so many other people in one space. And then two, there was also the language barrier too as well. And so not only do you stick out like a sore thumb, you can't speak the language. And even when like there are mannerisms or phrases that my classmates would use that me being from Nigeria I wouldn't understand. I'm trying to think of some right now, but nothing's coming to mind. You know, but oh yeah, even this is something silly, but I remember the first time I heard the word fart because in Nigeria we don't say fart.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
somebody said fart and I had no idea what they were talking about. Like, but I was too embarrassed to say anything, so I went to go Google it. I mean, not Google. I went to look at a dictionary,
Yeah.
and even then, I was like, "Are they saying like FARD or what are they saying?" Because
Yeah.
the accent. So just it was such a it was the first couple of years. Like I said, the first 2 years was really tough, only because again the language barrier, and then just I would say kids being not used to seeing someone. They have darker skinned people for sure, but I was obviously the darkest
Hmm.
there. Like they have, but for the most part, like if you're looking like a scale from like dark to or black to white, a lot of people still trended towards more of the white side
Okay.
than anything else. Too, as well, because I was in a prominent school, you tend to see a lot of whiter kids, like even like the Americans who were in Venezuela for work, whatever, they had their kids go to that school too as well. So it was still a predominantly white school,
Okay.
or white school, if you will, in quotations. Now, once I started to learn the language and then you understand what they're saying, you know, saying about you, it became even more of a tougher experience. And I felt like from then, I felt like I had to do more to just be accepted. I remember one time, I was playing sports and I'd hit my head and scraped my head, my forehead, and obviously it's bleeding or whatever. and you can see the skin underneath it. And then one of the kids go, "Oh, so after all, you're white underneath." I'm just like,
Oh my God.
and then as a kid, you don't have to process it. If I go tell, I mean, I'll go home and tell my dad, but he doesn't get it. He can never understand it because he's in an office setting.
Mhm.
I mean, I'm sure he's dealing with his own stuff too as well. But like,
Yeah.
it's just something like he cannot possibly relate to.
Hmm.
And his response was, "Go and read your book." So,
Yeah.
so like that was, like I said, it was the first 2 years. I'm not gonna lie, they were tough to navigate. And then after that, once I actually started like form friends, start to, I don't know, it sucks to say, but kind of show that I have value within myself.
Wow.
Then you start to see like more kids warm up. But like I said, why do I even have to do that? If I was
Yeah.
like a white kid or something, like it would have just been easy to assimilate. But that was not the
Yeah.
case.
I'm really curious now that you brought up your dad. Have you ever had this conversation with him of like his own experience within all these different um racially and culturally different spaces for work, and he's trying to, be there for his family, provide for his family, but did you ever, or have you ever had a conversation with your dad just to ask about his own experience with racism or being the other, quote and unquote, in all those different spaces?
Yeah, we've definitely talked about it we've definitely talked after the fact, of course, as we're both adults now. We've definitely talked about it, or I'm an adult now anyway, so I can have this conversation with him.
Hmm.
And his whole thing from since time has always been like, yeah, he may have experienced one or two microaggressions in that space, but he just lets his work do the talking for him.
Hmm.
So his entire mindset was, as long as I can show without a shadow of a doubt like I'm irreplaceable in this space, or I
Hmm.
can get the work done, then it doesn't matter really. So his entire thing was to kind of almost ignore it
Hmm.
and just get to the task at hand, which me myself I have issues with per se, because I don't think that sort of thing works for everybody.
Right.
But that was his own approach to it, and that's really what he preached. So whenever when I was younger, when I would say, "Hey, I'm having a tough," not that I would say like that, but I'd be like, basically, I'm having a tough time at school because of X, Y, Z. They'd be like, "Yeah, well, you won't have a tough time if you're the smartest in the class or whatever the case is." Like that doesn't really translate, but it's okay.
Yeah.
Because imagine being that you're only propped up because of your, I don't know, what you can do for a predominantly, at the end of the day, predominantly white company or whatever the case may be. I don't know, something about that still never really um, rubbed me the right way, but that was basically the extent of our conversations and how he handled being an other in all this different. Because even before we all traveled, he was traveling. Like he traveled to Europe for a bit, to UK, Amsterdam, for work, and then come back. Like he was already more exposed to a majority of the cultural differences before we as in my family got exposed to it, and
Hmm.
that was his approach to it.
Wow. That makes sense because I feel like with a lot of people, my parents or our parents' generation, the idea, and not just even black, I think it's mostly with like people of color. Like you would hear a lot of
Hmm.
like Asians and folks from other communities and cultures say this as well, that it's almost like that weird performative gratitude of like, oh, you're here, just be grateful you're here, and like
Hmm.
do the best
Yeah,
that you can and prove that you're very valuable, and then they'll
exactly.
start to look at you with respect and things like that. And I mean, there is truth to that because the moment you start
There
to
is,
show
yeah.
yourself, people start to
Hmm.
look at you differently, like, oh, oh,
Yeah,
oh, well, hello, my name. And they start to address you properly and treat you
yeah,
with more respect. And but it's just a weird thing that like it should not be earned. It should not have
yeah.
to be earned because for you to be in that space at all, that means you are qualified
Qualified.
and
Yeah,
valuable enough to be in
yeah.
that space. So for you to find yourself there and and still realize that you have to work harder than everybody else and put in extra time and still put with a smile on your face while
Yeah.
everyone
Hmm.
else is being normal. It's really hard. It's really
It's
hard,
it's
but
it's tough. Yeah,
yeah, it's
yeah.
really
It's
tough.
tough.
And I would imagine like our parents did it for us. At the end of the day, it's like
Exactly.
I
Yeah.
can't lose this job. I have a
Hmm.
family, I have children to
Hmm.
feed, school fees, and all these
Hmm.
things need to be done. So like
Hmm.
I admire the resilience and the mental toughness that it takes, but at the same time my heart kind of aches for them that like
Mhm.
they're not really
Mhm.
able to feel feelings and
Mhm.
process it. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Yeah. It is definitely a double-edged sword, like I said, like you rightly said, there is truth and merit to the fact that yes, like, people will give you the respect or I guess the acknowledgement when you are good at what you do. Like, there's nothing wrong with being good at what you do. But my thing was just like, why do I have to be the best at anything to even get basic respect?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or basic acknowledgement, so to speak, when that is not the same qualification for anybody else. Why do I have to come into a space and be the smartest kid in the school so that I can now make friends?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Yeah, it's just
So yeah,
the
I don't know.
mathematics is like 2 times 2, 22. It's not.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. So, what is blackness then to you? Having, experienced it, blackness, Nigerianness, Africanness, and your own cultural difference or similarities in all the different spaces that you have lived in. What is blackness to you then? How would you describe blackness? For me, I know personally, I didn't really realize I was black until I moved to Canada, and all of a sudden, I was just boxed into this group of people that are black,
Mhm.
and I'm like, oh
Mhm.
wow, well, that is new,
Mhm. Mhm.
and it could be really tough because like as Nigerian, like Nigeria is an African country, so it's predominantly black people. So you're described by your culture, your name, like things like that, but to just be kind of grouped in with a demographic that, oh, you're black, like there's something that just does not sit right with me, but it just is the reality of living in the diaspora. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Where you are black, and then you can start to break down your blackness of like, oh, I'm African American, or I'm from Nigeria, or I'm Ghanaian, or my parents are from Haiti. And that's when, but it's under that blackness that you can now start like
Yeah.
describing where you're from. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? So what is that?
Mhm.
What is blackness to you, having lived in all these different spaces?
I'm actually going to answer that question in phases, and I think like one thing I will start with is like I will not go into like a space of, like, let's say I was in Nigeria right now, I'm living among Yoruba people. I'm not Yoruba, so nobody's gonna be like, oh yeah, you're Yoruba because you're living with Yoruba people or because you
Mm-hmm.
look like Yoruba. Like, they'll be like, oh,
Exactly.
I'm Isoko. Whereas with, like, especially living in North America, we're all under that black monolith, regardless of where we come from, and that's, for me, that's what blackness isn't. It is not a monolith,
Exactly.
and that's what my I don't know if that's been beaten around the bush, but that's what my experience across, I guess, North America and South America has told me. It's just like there are so many different ways, or yeah, to express blackness or to be black. It's almost a disservice to just lump a group of people as like, oh, they're this,
Mm-hmm.
because nothing wrong with that. Like, I love being black, but like my blackness and your blackness and James' blackness are all different types of blackness.
Mm-hmm.
I can I even I've met what do you call, like, black Afro. Wow, why am I blanking out? I've met Afro Latinos. There we go. Met
Mm-hmm.
Afro Latinos, and they are unique in this. In like, I find them to be very, very unique, just because it's just like they have a black experience that is so far removed from the ones we have here.
Mm-hmm.
And that the ones that you see in the States, obviously, and more often than not, I find that like the States is often used as the measurement of what it means to be black,
Yeah.
and I can't disagree with that more.
Yeah.
Again, and that's across the board, like when you think of black people, most people's minds automatically go towards like African Americans, you know,
Mm.
which is not, it's kind of doing a disservice to every version of black people. So for me, I think the big thing to take away is just like being blackness means a whole host of things that just can't be put into one thing, because once you starting to define blackness, you start to all of a sudden people are not acting black. People are not talking black. It's like, oh, why do you
I
talk like
see.
this?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, that was a big thing when I was living in the States. It's just like, oh, you talk white. No, I just talk how I talk. You know, and
Man,
this is from African Americans. It's like I
you
just
talk
talk how I
white.
talk. Yeah, like, oh,
Wow.
you talk white. I'm just like, no, like
So wait. Is talking white basically speaking with proper grammar?
even that I would say I have a problem with. But yes, that's what basically translated to, like, because I enunciated my words, etc. All of a sudden I talked white. I'm just like, no, there's no one way for black people to talk.
Period.
Black people talk in different ways,
Yeah.
even like, and I got this from, again, from both black and white people, like, oh, you're different from, it's like, no, I'm just my own version of black. I have, like, that has nothing to do with, I am a product of my experiences, just like people here are product of their experiences, and people in Canada are product of their experiences. Matter of fact, when I moved to Canada, and it's a wrong thinking, but I was just like, where is the black identity? Because you had like the Africans in this space, the Caribbeans in this space, you know, and even among the Africans, like the West Africans over here, the
Mm-hmm.
Sudanese over there. I was
Yeah.
just like, where's like that black identity? Because with African Americans, like, I guess because they've lived in the States for so long, why most of us in Canada are like immigrants. There are very few, or the numbers, I know there is like a large or a decent population of black people who grew up in, who have a history in Canada,
Mm-hmm.
but I, I don't have the numbers, but I want to say the majority of black people in Canada are immigrants, or at least second generation immigrants. And so, just to circle back and answer your question, for me, blackness is so, it's just our skin color, to be honest, but it's such a whole host, like, that's the beauty of it. I've come across black from different backgrounds, and I'm just stunned by their different experience. Like, it's very crazy. So it's just, we're not a monolith. We're not one thing. We're just a whole bunch of cultures, and who just happen to be black.
Yeah. So basically, blackness cannot be defined by one
Yeah.
thing or the other. You mentioned a few really interesting points when you were talking. 100%, blackness is not a monolith. Like that right there is a myth. And it's so interesting because like the US, there are these like words people, I don't know if people use these words to describe the countries like Canada and the US, or they have described themselves in this way. Canada is described as a mosaic of cultures, and then the US is described as a melting pot
Mm-hmm.
where all these cultures come in to mix and
Mm-hmm.
assume an identity under like the American culture, whether that is American, African American or Asian American or whatever. And within Canada, the idea of the mosaic is that you can still maintain your cultures as much as
Mm-hmm.
possible while living in this larger space and larger culture of Canada.
Yeah.
I appreciate the heart behind it and the intention, but in a lot of ways, it's not. I don't think it's true to people's experiences in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that thing about talking white is such a weird statement
Yeah.
because for me, I feel like it is internalized racism.
Yeah.
If a black person should say that they have internalized the racism, and if a white person says it, it is racist. Period. Because like, what is your idea of how a black person speaks? Is it based on media? What is it based on? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's just one of those things that really grates on my nerves. And then if by the time you bring accent into it, because there's some people that
Mm-hmm.
truly believe that if someone is speaking with an accent, they're dumb.
Yeah. Or that English is not their first language.
There are people that just have those weird assumptions, and there are these like weird myths that people strongly believe around language and around speech, English language, and it's just a really bizarre thing that is
Mm-hmm.
just so widely accepted by a community, by the society, that just needs to be like broken and thrown into the trash can.
Yeah. Actually, even a couple years ago, I remember I was speaking to a gentleman just like randomly, and he's like, "Man, your English is so good, you know." Because he asked my name, and then I was just like, "Oh, my name is Obaro," and then he's like, "Man, you must not be from here because of your name." He's like, "Your English is so good. How come?" I'm just like, "Oh, because English is my first language." It's like, but you weren't born here. I'm like, that has nothing to do with anything. That has nothing to do with anything. And I feel like that's Canadians' version of just, I wouldn't say microaggression, just more so just that shared ignorance.
That is
Yeah,
blatant racism because
you
the
know?
racism is even ignorant. The British people colonized a lot of places, including the US.
I don't find that these are like some kind of hidden knowledge. I feel like it's like should be basic stuff. But then again, the guy was so stunned. He's like, "Wow."
Even if you don't know, it's fine not to know stuff. Like, you don't know everything, right? So it's okay to
Hmm.
be ignorant about some things. But if you know that if someone asks you that question, if the table was turned and someone else asked you that question, it will sound funny in your ears. Don't ask it to somebody else. Google it.
Exactly. It's like he's like, man, he was like so convinced. Like, so you've been here a while, right? I'm like, I have been here a while, but that has nothing to do with my ability to speak English. I was born speaking English. I'm going to die speaking English. Like.
Anyways, now that we've got that off our chest. Yeah, so my next question then would be, how would you say that your self-identity has evolved in all these different spaces that you've lived in? Your sense of self and your self-identity, how would you say it has been
Mhm.
impacted by these spaces?
Yeah, and I know I've answered this in bits and pieces, but I think like again for me, it's just my assuredness in who I am. Like like I said, I am Nigerian Canadian. I have never been more Nigerian Canadian than I am today in my life. So it's just further affirmed my identity, having all these experiences, and for myself, I am a combination of all of these experiences. Um, and I can be in a space where I can get along with Africans or Nigerians with quite ease. I can be in a space where I can connect and relate to African Americans. My ability to speak Spanish allows me to be in a place where I can speak with Afro Latinos. So it's I think it's just giving me like it's still a very small window, but a small window into how massive Blackness is, and further I feel so sure in my own self, of where I stand in this, diaspora, if you will, or I don't know how you want to call it, but yeah, it just made me be more sure of myself because for the longest time I did question like, okay, what am I really? I'm not
Mm-hmm.
really African American, you know. I didn't go to boarding school in Nigeria, so I don't have all these experiences. Like what for literally for a good number of my young adult, late teenagers to early adulthood, I questioned where I stood as far as being black. Like, do I have to tell a story about where I'm from every time somebody asks me where I'm from? Like, no, no, I'm Nigerian Canadian. If you want my history, then sure, I'll give you my history, but I am this person without a
Mm-hmm.
shadow of a doubt. So, yeah, it just allowed me to really embrace, especially that, like, it's funny because experiencing all of these different aspects of being black allowed me to embrace being Nigerian even more. Like
Really?
I've never been more proud to be Nigerian,
Okay,
even
okay.
with all the issues that country has. I've never been more proud to be Nigerian. So yeah,
That's amazing.
like I think if you're gonna be black, you should be Nigerian. But I'm just joking.
That's that ninja pride.
Exactly. Like yeah.
uh, okay, that's really good to hear. I'm Nigerian too, and I'm very proud of being Nigerian.
See?
I'm really, because you said some you in your, I guess, your journey of discovering or coming to a place of security within yourself of who you are. You talked about questioning if you are African American, or trying to investigate that within yourself. And I feel like even the term African American, like, if these folks knew exactly where they were from, they would claim it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, if
Hmm.
if they knew that, oh, I am from, my grandfather, my great 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 grandfather was from Nigeria, Mozambique, Zambia, like, you don't think they'll claim it? Of course they'll claim it.
Oh
There's
yeah, they
pride
would
there,
definitely claim
there's
it. Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
absolute pride in knowing your roots.
Yeah.
um and so for me, I'm an artist, so I have to write like artistic bios all the time. And like the first line there is, I'm a Nigerian based in Canada, because that's truly
Yeah.
how I see and view myself. I'm a Nigerian based in Canada. I now have two homes, Nigeria and Canada, and there's
Yeah.
beauty and power in both places. and both places have issues, and that's just the reality. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And coming to
yeah.
a place of peace with that, like no place is perfect, but being able to, as much as you can, take the best from both worlds and move forward.
Hmm.
That there's power and there's peace in that.
Yeah. That's really what it does boil down to at the end of the day. Like as you mentioned yourself, like every, as I get older, it's like, no, the Nigerian part comes first. I'm Nigerian, then Canadian, you know, and that identity was something that's been built over time, over different experiences, and I could not be prouder of.
So I have a question for you then. You have said that Canada is the place where you've lived in the longest
Hmm.
at this point.
Hmm.
Okay, I know, okay, let me use myself as an example. The longer I live in Canada, the more I kind of feel the urgency and the desire to hold on to my Nigerian culture and roots and heritage, the language, the pidgin, the food, the dance, the music, and all these different things. And I haven't been away from Nigeria as long as you have. And I'm curious how what that process has been like for you, of or your way of culturally trying to preserve the Nigerian in you. Then I'm assuming the good parts, because every place again has good and bad parts, but what has that journey been like for you, preserving the parts of your Nigerianness, your Nigerian culture, your Nigerian um heritage? And if you ever have kids in the future, what do you see that process being like, of passing down these values, your Nigerian values, and things like that to them?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I think for me, what's holding on to that Nigerian culture has looked like is just being among Nigerians here in Calgary. There are one or two people here who call me Ajabota, and that's fine, Like, I'm okay with that because like just being in their presence and being in their space has allowed me to not only hold on to things but re-remember things. Maybe not that song like you asked me in the beginning, but just re-remember things, um, about
Right.
what it is like in the Nigerian culture, anyways. And so for me, what
Mm-hmm.
that has looked like here is just being friends with Nigerians, being going to Nigerian events, playing like there's even like as this was a while back. I went to a games night for with friends, and it was like a Nigerian board game with a bunch of Nigerian trivia, and some of it was familiar, some of it was very new. Just little things like that is how I hold on to or keep track of Nigerian culture, and I think it's something I would want to implement with my kids. It's just like just because you're out of the country doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be out of the culture. So
Mm-hmm.
really like really again not losing track, immersing ourselves in the Nigerian culture even outside of Nigeria. It's how I would approach it with my own kids. It's how I would it's how I approach it myself here. So I think was I able to answer your question?
I think so. You're basically saying that
Yeah,
community is
yeah, yeah,
important
yeah.
for you in preserving your Nigerian values and heritage. And
Culture. Because the last time I was in Nigeria was 2018. I'm trying to make going back to Nigeria more of a frequent trip, you know. And again,
mm-hmm.
it's all to, like it's all to kind of be in touch with the culture.
So okay, wait, you just said the last time we were in Nigeria was 2018. How long were you there for?
What, like 2 weeks, a week and a half? Because I was actually there just to bury my grandmother. Yeah.
Oh,
Oh
I'm
no,
sorry
it's
to hear
quite all
that.
right. Yeah, that's really the reason. And the last time before that, because we moved in 99, and the last time before 2018 was in 2004, 2005. And it was for like maybe a week or two, and we spent the majority of the time in hotels because my parents didn't want us to be wandering around. So yeah, even when I was in Nigeria in 2018, we were in Lagos, my parents' house in Lagos, and then we went to the village in Warri to bury my grandmother. Back to Lagos, and then yeah, came back. So I didn't do anything. The most I did was go to like the markets, um, and
Mm.
I was not the one buying things. So so it was
You went sightseeing to the
yeah. I mean,
market.
it was like I was basically a foreign. I mean, I am a foreigner at that point. So when I say like my next experience, I wanted to be a bit more authentic, as far as authentic can go, anyways. Whereas
Yeah.
less because my parents are really protective, and they but I feel like if I go on my own or if I go with friends, the experience will be vastly different. Yeah,
That's true. That's true. If you now want to plan it, go for dirty December.
that's what I keep hearing. So I think I'm gonna make it happen this year.
Okay.
I want to experience it myself because that's what everybody talks about. Everybody, they're like, no, if you have to go to Nigeria, just go to Nigeria during December. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, you joined the IJGB gang. I just got back gang.
Yeah. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I hope that goes well for you. I know, like, the last time I was in Nigeria was last year, and I was there for
Hmm.
work. But even though I was there for work, I kind of tried to squeeze a few days to just say hello to friends and, you know, but even the work I was doing, I was in the trenches
Mm.
in Lagos, jumping bike,
Uh,
entering
yeah.
buses, like trying to get to the market, being in the market for hours in a day, and like mixing with all sorts of different cultures, pricing, merchandise in the market, how much lasts, things like
Things like I was
that.
actually watching. I was actually watching. Because we went with my parents' driver, and so he was the one doing all the
Okay,
negotiations. So I was just standing there looking like, yeah,
really?
like bro, they would have told me 10,000 naira. I'm like, okay, here you go. Actually, I was like, are you sure? Okay, here you go. Are you sure? Are you sure it's not 11,000 naira? Okay. That's where I would say I am not Nigerian at all in that space. Or that like
Oh my
not
god.
even like a I don't know if it's a hustle culture, but just a very
Is it
yeah,
haggling?
yeah,
Or is that the word you're
yeah.
looking for?
I
Yeah.
don't have the. I know it's funny. My mom was gonna kill me for this. Remember the first time we were in Venezuela? My mom tried to haggle at the grocery store.
At the grocery store?
That's something she was used to. So I'm like, okay, so imagine like you buy I don't know apples for $10. It's like, okay, well, what about $6? That memory sticks with me to today because I know I was embarrassed because I'm just like again, it's
Yeah.
like, hey mom, let's can we not do this?
Let's go home.
But not because I thought I knew better, but just I just didn't want to be here any longer than I want to be. So yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no. I feel like I can haggle prices like how much last. Then if you now know a bit of like their language, if the person's Yoruba and you speak some Yoruba, or the person's Igbo, then you speak some Igbo or things like that, then it takes it to the next
Yeah, so
level.
like I'm like, oh mom, I've given up. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Take it.
Or if you go to the market, you can't be speaking all this English that you're speaking. You have to break it down. You have to bring your worry
Mm-hmm.
pigeon to them. Make them no say.
The only one I know is at the craze, so at the craze. Even though they won't believe me. Even that one, they'll just look at me and be like, bro, who's this guy? Man, no,
Right, you need to go and
that's
learn
no.
pigeon.
I know basic pigeon, but after once I open my mouth too much, you will know. You will just know. But like they they just smell it. They're like, this one's not from here. It's okay. Like all right.
Oh my lord, that's funny. Okay, okay, okay. OBJ, thank you so much for your time here. This has been an amazing episode, and I look forward to having you again.
Amen to that.
I this was amazing.
Amen. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. And this was a lot of fun.
Awesome, awesome. So before you go, I want you to just drop a word of wisdom with us. Give us a sprinkle of like the African proverb that your mom tells you all the time, or you heard from your uncle, or something like that. Just leave us with something.
I think this is just more so from my own experience, which
Mm-hmm.
is it will it always works out. It was
Mm.
sometimes you find yourself in situations where it looks or it seems like there are no outs, but it always works out. And you don't there's it you never know how or the why, but eventually you're gonna look back and be like, oh wow, that actually worked out. So yeah, that's my thing. It always works out.
That is true. That is word. Thank you. So before you leave, just tell the people where they can find you on the internet if you are on the internet.
I am on the internet. What are my names actually? So I'm on Instagram as OBJ_1. Let me make sure of that. Yep, OBJ_1 is my Instagram name. It's where I'm the most active. I mean, I'm sure you can find me on Facebook, but you probably hear from me once every 2 years. And then I
X.
also have a Twitter
Mhm.
too as well, which is not quite as active, which is OBJ1 underscore. But the big one is OBJ1. I mean, OBJ_1, which is on Instagram.
So he does like fitness videos from like the
Hmm.
gym, and he does these really funny skits and things like that. And he's also an actor.
Yes. So if anyone from Disney is listening, please holler at me. I'll put that plug in there. Just holler. Actually, no, no. Let me not even say. If anyone is looking for an actor, holler at me. It doesn't matter what
Okay.
it is. I can do it. But yeah,
Shameless
very,
plug.
very,
You're
very,
like,
very
yep.
shameless. But yes, yeah, my page has a lot of me working out. I also do skits too as well. There hasn't been a lot of skits recently, but they will be coming back. And yeah, check me out.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you again for being with us today,
Thank you,
Obaro.
Sarah.
Thank you to our listeners. Until next time. Bye-bye. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Afros in the Diaspora. I hope this episode left you feeling inspired and hopeful. To engage, feel free to like, follow, share, and subscribe to Afros in the Diaspora on all social media and podcast platforms. Remember to leave a review and a rating. If you would like to be a guest, please reach out. Send an email to hi@afrosinthediaspora.com. That is hi@afrosinthediaspora.com. Or send us a DM on Instagram at afrosinthediaspora. Remember, there is beauty in our stories and power in our voices. Together, we are stronger. Until next time.